Hi, this is Elena, and I'm going to be presenting our work detecting unassimilated borrowings in Spanish and annotated corpus and approaches to modeling. So we're going to be covering what lexical borrowing is, the task that we proposed, the data set that we have released, and some models that we explored. But to begin with, what is lexical borrowing and why it matters as an NLP task? Well, lexical borrowing is basically the incorporation of words from one language into another language. For instance, in Spanish, we use words that come from English, and here you have a few examples. Words such as podcast, app, online, crowdfunding, all these are English words that we sometimes use in Spanish. Lexical borrowing is a type of linguistic borrowing, which is basically reproducing in one language patterns of other languages. And borrowing and code switching have sometimes been compared and described as a continuum. Code switching being the thing that bilinguals do where they mix two languages at the same time. There are, however, some differences between lexical borrowing and code switching. We're going to be focusing on lexical borrowing. Code switching is something that is done by bilinguals. And by definition, the code switches are not integrated into any of the languages in used, whereas lexical borrowing is something that is also done by monolinguals. The borrowings will comply with the grammar of the recipient language, and borrowings can eventually be integrated into the recipient language. So why is borrowing an interesting phenomenon? Well, from the point of view of linguistics, borrowing is a manifestation of how languages change and how they interact. And also lexical borrowings are a source of new words. Here you have some examples of lexical borrowings that have been incorporated into the Spanish language as new words. In terms of NLP, borrowings are a common source of out of vocabulary words. And in fact, automatically detecting lexical borrowings has proven to be useful for NLP downstream tasks, such as parsing, text-to-speech synthesis, or machine translation. There has been a growing interest in the influence of English on other languages, particularly related to English lexical borrowings, which sometimes have been called Anglicisms. And here you have some examples of work on automatic detection of borrowings in some of these languages. So the task that we propose is to detect unassimilated lexical borrowings in Spanish newswire, which means that we are interested in extracting words borrowed from other languages that are being used in Spanish newspapers, but that have not been integrated or assimilated into the recipient language. So not yet integrated into Spanish. Here you have an example. This is a sentence in Spanish. Las prendas bestsellers se estampan con motivos florales, animal print o arretales tipo patchwork. And as you can see, there are three spans of text which are actually English words like bestseller, animal print, and patchwork. These are the type of spans that we are interested in extracting and detecting. There has been previous work on Anglicism detection, which consisted of a CRF model for Anglicism detection on Spanish newswire. This model achieved an F1 score of 86, but there were some limitations both in the dataset and the modeling approach. So the dataset focused exclusively on one source of news, consisted only of headlines. And also there was an overlap in the borrowings that appear in the training set and the test set. So this prevented the assessment of whether the modeling approach could actually generalize to previously unseen borrowings. So what we aim is to tackle some of these limitations in the task. So to begin with, we created a new data set. The aim, a new data set that was annotated with lexical borrowings, and the aim was to create a test set that was as difficult as possible. So there would be minimal overlap in words and topics between the training set and the test set. And as a result, well, the test set comes from sources and dates that were not seen in the training set. Here you can see that there's no overlap in the time. It's also, the test set is also very borrowing dense. Just to give you some numbers, if the training set contains 6 borrowings per each 1,000 tokens, the test set contained 20 borrowings per each 1,000 tokens. The test set contained as many out of vocabulary words as possible. In fact, 92% of the borrowings in the test set are OOV, so they were not seen during training. And the corpus consisted basically of a collection of texts that came from different sources of Spanish newspapers. And it was annotated by hand using two tags. One for English lexical borrowings, which is the majority of lexical borrowings in Spanish, and then the label other for borrowings from other languages. We used Gonal formats and we used BIO encoding, so that we could encode single token borrowings such as app, or multi-token borrowings such as machine learning. These are the numbers of the corpus. As you can see, it amounts to roughly 370,000 tokens. And here you have the number of spans that were labeled as English and the spans that were labeled as other borrowings, and how many of them were unique. And here you have a couple of examples of the data set. As you can see, for instance, here we have in the first example, we have the borrowing batch cooking, which is a multi-word borrowing, and we have annotated it using the BIO encode. So the BIO was used for words in Spanish, so not for words that were not borrowed. And here in this second example, you have benching and crash, which are also labeled as borrowings from English. So once we had the data set, we explored several models for the task of extracting and detecting these lexical borrowings. The first one that we tried was a conditional random field model. This was the model that had been used on previous work. And we used the same handcrafted features from that work. As you can see, these are the features. These are binary features, such as is the word or the token in uppercase, is it title case, is it a quotation mark, things like that, which are the type of features that one would expect in a named entity recognition task. These are the results that we got. We obtain 55 of F1 score using the CRF model with handcrafted feature, which is a huge difference compared to the reported F1 score of 86, which was the result obtained with the same CRF model, same features, but on a different data set, also for Spanish lexical borrowing detection. So this proves that the data set that we created is more difficult, and that we needed to explore more sophisticated models for these tasks. So we tested two transformer-based model. We used Beto, which is a monolingual BERT model trained for Spanish, and also multilingual BERT. Both models, we use them through the transformers library by Hugging Face. These are the results that we got. As you can see, multilingual BERT performed better than Beto, both on the development set and on the test set, and across all metrics. Just so we have an idea to compare, the CRF model obtained an 82. The CRF model obtained a 55 of F1 score, whereas the multilingual BERT obtained 82, which is a big difference. So once that we had those results, we asked ourselves another question, which is could we find a BiLSTM-CRF model fitted with different types of embeddings that encode different type of linguistic information, and outperform the results obtained by transformer-based models? So in order to do so, we ran some preliminary experiments. We run this BiLSTM-CRF model using Flare library, and we tried and experimented with different type of embeddings, like transformer-based, but also fast text, character embeddings, and so on. What we found out was that transformer-based embeddings perform better than non-contextualized embeddings, that the combination of English BERT and Spanish Beto embeddings outperform multilingual BERT embeddings, and that BP embeddings produce better F1 and character embeddings produce better recall. With that in mind, these were the best performing results that we got. Both models were BiLSTM-CRF model using Flare. One was fed with Beto and BERT embeddings and BPE, and the other one Beto, BERT, and BERT embeddings, BPE, and also character embeddings. This last one was the one that produced the highest F1 score on the test set, although the highest score on the development set was obtained by the one without character embeddings. Just to bear in mind that the best result that we got with multilingual BERT obtained an F1 of 76 on the development set and 82 on the test set. So this is an improvement compared to those results. Finally, we ask ourselves another question, which was, can lexical borrowing detection be framed as transfer learning from language identification in code switching? So we run the same BiLSTM-CRF model that we had run using FLAIR, but instead of using these unadapted transformer-based Beto and BERT embeddings, we use code switching embeddings. What are code switch embeddings? Well, these are embeddings that have been fine-tuned, transformer-based embeddings that have been pre-trained for language identification on the Spanish-English section of the Lince code switching dataset. Lince is a dataset on code switching that has a section on Spanish-English code switching. So we fed our BiLSTM-CRF with code switch embeddings and optionally character embeddings, BPR embeddings, and so on. The best result that we got was 84.22, which is the highest across all the models that we tried on the test set, although the best result F1 score that we got on the development set, which was 79, was lower than the best result obtained by the BiLSTM-CRF fed with unadapted embeddings. So some conclusions from our work. We have produced a new data set of Spanish newswire that is annotated with unassimilated lexical borrowings. This data set is more borrowing dense and OOV-rich than previous resources. We have explored 4 types of models for lexical borrowing detection. In terms of error analysis, well, recall was a weak point for all models. As you can see here, some frequent false negatives include uppercase borrowings, words that exist in both in English and Spanish, for instance. Also, interestingly, BP embeddings seem to improve F1 score, and character embeddings seem to improve recall, which it's an interesting finding that perhaps we can explore on future work. And well, this is everything that I have. Thank you so much for listening.